Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to do this real quick live stream. I may do one later on tonight talking about this issue further. But I saw this article last night and I figured that I had to bring this discussion to YouTube. Again, I'll be back on here. I may be back on here later on tonight to further elaborate on this. I have a limited amount of time. I have to get to work soon. So I just wanted to take some time to talk about this particular issue. So I'm going to share my screen. I saw this article yesterday, and I just want to share it with you and discuss it briefly. So this is an article from Complex, and it's about an interview that Akon did with Vlad TV. And on this interview, Akon said this. I'm going to go through what he said. And hold on one second. Let me increase the font so it's easier for me to see. So this article says that Akon caught heat this week after he was asked about the way slavery is viewed in Senegal. And as you all know, that's a West African country. And he basically said the Senegalese no longer think about slavery because they have overcome its horrors, unlike African Americans. He said this, in Senegal, we've kind of overcome the thought of slavery. We don't even think about it, he said during his interview with Vlad TV. The only time we think about it, honestly, is when we're doing tours at Goree Island. Outside of that, people have lived and moved way beyond the slavery concept. And then he went on to say that Black Americans would benefit by letting go of slavery. He said, I think it's the art of just letting go. I think that it's the art of just letting the past go and moving forward towards the future. And he went on to say this, I think in the US, they have a stigma of just not letting go of the past and blaming the past on every mishap or, disappointment. And I think as long as you hold on to that past, there's a lot of weight that you carry with you everywhere you go. It's hard to move forward and move fast when you got a weight on your back. You just gotta let it go. So he said that, and then he went on to talk about how African Americans need to understand their worth and accept that America will never make up for their racist history. He went on to say this, they're not sorry, they don't care, it's obvious. And then he went on to encourage African Americans to move to Africa. Do you want to stay here and continue to be treated this way? Or just go back home where you are no longer the minority? You're actually the majority, and you control your destiny, your future, and your land. And then he went on to say that America did a good job at brainwashing. And he talked about how the moment you mention Africa, they start shaking. They don't even know why. So I'm going to talk about these things step by step in this article real quick in this brief period of time that I have. The first thing that I want to say is this, I have to address Vlad TV before I go into the substance of this. It seems like Vlad TV is, always generating controversy. It is, puts people in situations where they end up talking about things and people end up getting arrested for crimes and stuff like that. Doing these interviews with Vlad TV, he often helps instigate beefs between people. And now you have this situation with Akon just basically being goaded into saying some things that have him at odds with the Black community, the Black American community. So I had to get that off of my chest. I mean, here you got this guy, Vlad TV, who's a culture vulture, who thrives off of Black culture and everything, and exploits Black culture for his own benefit. And, often it's to the detriment of Black people, whether it's Black people getting locked up for talking too much on his programs, or Black people getting caught up at beefs because of the stuff that they say on his programs. And in some incidents, Black people end up dead, after doing interviews with this guy and talking about beefs and all that kind of stuff. So he's a problem. The other thing that I've had to say is this, I have to respond to some of the things that Akon said in this particular speech or this interview. We're not going past slavery. I mean, we're not letting go of slavery. And I'm going to explain to you why. I mean, this country was built on slavery, number one. Number two, slavery was not that long ago. There are some people that have great grandparents who were slaves, and some of our elders, there was this federal judge that passed away a few months ago, and his grandparents were slaves. So slavery was not that long ago. So that's a key point. Another thing is this. The economic disparities that we see in our community are a direct result of the legacy of slavery and the legacy of Jim Crow. So we are not going to look past this. We're not looking past it until we have justice, until we have reparations for the damage that was done as a result of hundreds of years of slavery. So that's something that has to be pointed out. I mean, you have all these financial and the reason why it matters today is because you have all these institutions that have been enriched as a result of slavery. People that are rich today because of the legacy of their grandparents who were slave owners. You have these companies, whether we're talking about insurance companies, banks, even educational institutions, and the federal government itself, and these state governments. All these institutions financially benefited from the enslavement of Black people. And as a result of that enslavement, Black people are financially disadvantaged, financially in an inferior status because of that legacy of slavery. And the only way you correct that legacy is by confronting that legacy and bringing about reparations because of that legacy. And, in addition to the financial aspect, we still suffer from the psychological damage of slavery. And the myth of white supremacy that emerged as a result of slavery. This idea that this white man is somehow superior, all these myths that were pumped into our brains and continue to be pumped into our brains because of that legacy of slavery. So we're not moving past slavery until we have some justice, until we have the issue of slavery being confronted and addressed. Slavery was about 150 years ago. That's not that long ago. So let's quit pretending like this is something to forget and move past and all that kind of stuff. And, I find it deeply problematic that you would have somebody who comes from a place like Senegal, which was at the heart of the slave trade, talking about his people have moved past slavery. When that's where, a lot of us actually came from Senegal. A lot of us came through Gorée Island. Our ancestors came through Gorée Island. Were shackled and, they went through the door of no return and all that kind of stuff, and ended up in this land called America and stuff. And, the people in Senegal were a part of that history. So how could you forget that history? And I think that unfortunately, a lot of those families in Senegal, like they were a part of the slave trade. You had different African groups at war with one another, and they would give their prisoners of war to these white slave masters that ended up in, bringing us to America in bondage. So a lot of these people, unfortunately, they didn't have the same kind of emotional attachment to the African that was, turned over to the slave master and stuff like that. So they have less sympathy for, some of them have less sympathy for African Americans, unfortunately, and some of them have bought into this European mind. And even though he's talking about in the later statements in this particular interview, he's talking about certain ideas that really go against the grain of white supremacy. But here, when he talks about letting go, when I first read that statement, when I read this particular article, the first thing I thought of is that this man sounds just like the white man. You know, these white people who say you need to forget about slavery and stuff like that. You need to move beyond it. And I'm not saying that anybody should wallow in victimhood or anybody should sit back and say, well, just wallow in that and just say, well, I can't achieve anything because of slavery and stuff like that. Of course, I don't believe that. Of course, I think that we need to strive for excellence and do the best that we can with what we have and make our way in this world, and not just fall back and just blame people for everything. But we have to confront this problem of racism in the society. We have to confront this legacy of slavery in the society and its continuing impact on our lives. And, when I think about this whole thing of letting go, we're the only people told to let go. We're the only ones told that we need to get past it. Nobody tells the Jewish people to get over the Holocaust. Nobody tells the Japanese Americans to get over the detention camps that they were held in. Nobody tells the Native American to get over the genocide that they were subjected to when this country was colonized. Nobody tells them that. Nobody tells these independent African nations to get over colonialism. They don't tell them that. Those independent African countries celebrate, their liberation. They celebrate their independence. So why are people always telling the African American to forget about what has happened to him? When 9/11 happened, and those towers came down, people kept saying, we're never going to forget. But here you have a people that were enslaved for hundreds of years, beaten, raped, castrated, subjected to the worst possible treatment ever. And you got people talking about we need to forgive and forget, or we need to get over something. To hell with that. Until we have justice, we're not getting over anything. Until we have economic justice and reparations, it's no way we're getting over slavery. It would be an injustice for us to forget our ancestors who labored under slavery for hundreds of years. That would be ridiculous. It would be a disrespect of our ancestors. And it's just a shame that you had this African person, Akon, talking about, we need to let go of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Let go of it. Here you have a man that is benefiting from African-American culture as well, making it in the hip hop industry, something created by Black people. Now, this brother does some great things in his community in Africa and stuff like that are commendable. But I just think that he needs to be more sensitive to the African-American community that has helped him reach the success that he has recognized in his life, the same community that he's using their culture to get prosperous and stuff like that. He needs to have more respect and appreciation of our experience. And I think that often this is about a lack of education that we see. It's about indoctrination and just a lack of sympathy and stuff like that. Because a lot of these people, their experience is completely, it's different from ours. Even though we were subjected to, slavery, and these African countries were subjected to colonialism. So their experience is different. It's different when you live in an all Black country ruled by Black people. You're less likely to be thinking about the kinds of issues that the African American thinks about it. The African American is subjected to all this inequality that exists in America. You know, whether we're talking about education, we're talking about wealth, we're talking about health, just every single category of life, the African American is in a lower status, unfortunately. So yeah, so that's something that I had to mention. You know, the other point is this. You know, he talks about um, African Americans going back to Africa, basically suggesting that that's some kind of solution. And I think that that may be something good for individuals, you know, to go back to Africa, to build in Africa, and be amongst your own people and stuff like that. I don't have any problem with black people going back to Africa and living in Africa, but that is not a solution to our problems. You know, there will be no mass exodus to Africa, and even if we were to go to Africa, you still can't run from white supremacy. White supremacy is a worldwide global system of inequality. Even these African countries still are subjected to European dominance and European influence. You know, a lot of these countries are in debt to European nations. You know, a lot of their leaders are subservient to these European nations, and they're puppets of these European nations. So yeah, just going back to Africa is not a solution to our problem. But I do appreciate what he's saying, and that was one positive aspect in what he said during this interview. So let me go to and he was right about our perception of Africa, about the indoctrination and stuff like that. So I agree with that aspect of what he had to say. Um, but I just don't think that it's some kind of magical solution to our problem for all black people to go to Africa or anything. And then that's not what he's saying. But I'm just saying that it's not a solution to our problems. It's not a panacea because it's not a practical thing. You know, there will be no mass of millions upon millions of African people in America going back to Africa. That's just the reality of the situation. And even if we were to go back to Africa, I'm sure that there would still be some tension, some particular issues. We would be a group among other groups, just like any other tribe of people. There would be some differences and there would be some issues, I'm sure. Um, so I don't have like some idealistic view of what it would mean to go back to Africa, and how that would affect our situation as a people. But yeah, I just wanted to share my thoughts about this briefly. I'm really interested in hearing what you all have to say about this. um, yeah, I just think that it's problematic for somebody to say that we need to let go of slavery and stuff like that when it impacts every aspect of our lives. When even today, all these years later, we have this inequality as a result of this. We have the myth and lie of white supremacy that's still with us today. Even the legacy of the police is connected to slavery. So you can't even think of America without thinking about slavery. Slavery is in the fabric of this country. It's woven into um, just the history of this country. It is this country. So I just had to share these thoughts. I'm just interested in hearing what you have to say. Unfortunately, it just seems like a lot of our African brothers and sisters they just don't know about our situation, and they need to be educated. Some of them just have no knowledge of our situation. Some of them lack empathy. And that's, again, a matter of people being ignorant and just being uninformed. And a lot of times it's a result of indoctrination. People have been indoctrinated to have adverse attitudes toward other Black people. Just like Black people in America have been taught all these myths and lies about the African on the continent, they have been taught lies about us as well. lies to the extent that some of them have actually, that some of them actually harbor anti-African American views. Somebody shared a video with me to illustrate this point. And before I show this to you, I'm not going to play the video. I'm just going to show the image to you. Um, but even in this situation, I just think that it's a matter of ignorance. And what we need to do is build knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and mutual cooperation with our brothers and sisters. If we can talk about, racial issues with this white man, then surely we can help, work on building bridges between different African people worldwide. But I'm going to share my screen real quick. So somebody posted this video right here to one of my videos where I was critical of Yvette Carnell. And they were, and it's just a video of this African rap artist who has this song called Akata. And as pointed out in here, it's a derogatory, that term Akata is a derogatory term that some Africans use against African Americans. Some Africans on the West Coast of Africa use towards African Americans. And in this song, this guy is singing repeatedly. Oh, the hook of the song is "Beware the Akata," or stay away from the Akata, or something like that. And he's imitating, African American culture. Like he's imitating hip hop, which was created by African American people, as he sings this anti-African American song. It makes mockery of African American people. And it's just, this is the kind of ignorance that we need to fight against. This is the kind of ignorance that perpetuates the division of African people worldwide. And when African people are divided, they lose power. So let me just stop sharing that. Ultimately, we need to be about building bridges and building understanding between African people worldwide. This is something that Malcolm X talked about. This is something that Kwame Nkrumah talked about. Marcus Garvey, all of our great leaders in our history have talked about the need to build African unity. And that's what we need to be about. We need to educate people like, Akon and, all these other people that just don't know. I think that his intentions may be, I'm not going to say that he has bad intentions. I just think that he's uninformed. And I just think that it's unfortunate that in Africa, like in Senegal in particular, that something like this slavery is not emphasized if what he's saying is correct. These are his personal statements. I don't think that he can speak for a whole country necessarily. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I just wanted to share this with you all briefly. Again, I may do a video after this going into more detail about this. So please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to respond to your comments. I just have to get to work in a couple of minutes. As you all know, because of COVID, I'm working at home. So peace and blessings, everyone. I hope that y'all have a great day.